Why medical bills cause so much confusion? Medical bills are one of the most common sources of confusion and stress in everyday American life. Many people receive bills weeks or even months after treatment, often with amounts that seem unexpected or unclear. In some cases, multiple bills arrive for the same visit, each from a different provider. Because of this complexity, many people are unsure how serious a medical bill really is, or what happens if it is ignored. In this video, American Rights Guide explains what typically happens when a medical bill goes unpaid in the United States. We will walk through the process step by step, explain how medical billing differs from other types of debt, and clarify what consequences are real versus what is often misunderstood. This video is for general educational purposes only and explains how the system usually works, not what someone should do in a specific situation. How medical billing works before you ever see a bill. When medical care is provided, billing does not begin with the patient. It begins behind the scenes. First, the healthcare provider submits information about the visit, treatment, or procedure. If you have insurance, this information is sent to the insurance company as a claim. The insurance company then reviews the claim to determine what portion of the charges it will pay. This review process can take time, especially if additional documentation is required or if the provider is outside your insurance network. During this period, no bill is usually due from the patient. Once the insurance company finishes processing the claim, it sends an explanation of benefits. This document explains what was billed, what the insurance paid, and what portion may be the patient's responsibility. Only after this step does the provider typically send a bill to the patient. This multi-step process explains why medical bills often arrive long after the actual visit, and why the first bill you receive may not always reflect the final amount owed. Why the first medical bill is often not final. Many people assume the first medical bill they receive is final and accurate. In reality, medical billing is frequently adjusted after the initial statement. Insurance reprocessing, coding corrections, or additional claims can change the amount over time. Because of this, providers often allow a window of time before expecting payment. During this early stage, reminder notices may be sent, but penalties are uncommon. This early period is often misunderstood as a sign that the bill is not serious, when in fact it is simply moving through a slow system. Ignoring the bill does not stop the billing process. It simply means the process continues without input from the patient. A timeline. What typically happens over time? To understand the consequences of ignoring a medical bill, it helps to look at the process over time. Days 0 to 30 after the bill is issued. During the first month, the bill is usually still with the original provider. Statements may be mailed or made available online. At this stage, the bill is considered current or only slightly overdue. No credit reporting occurs during this period. Collection agencies are not involved. The provider may simply be waiting for payment, insurance clarification, or patient response. Days 30 to 90. Reminders and follow-ups. As time passes, the provider may send additional reminders. These may appear more urgent, but they are still part of internal billing. Some providers may begin making phone calls, while others rely on written notices. During this stage, many providers are still open to payment plans or billing reviews. Financial assistance programs are often available at this point, though they may not be clearly advertised. Ignoring the bill during this period still does not usually result in credit reporting or legal action. Days 90 to 180 possible transfer to collections. If the bill remains unpaid for several months, the provider may decide to transfer the account to a collections agency. This decision is not automatic and varies by provider, amount owed, and internal policies. Once transferred, the collections agency becomes responsible for contacting the patient. However, even at this stage, medical debt is often treated differently than other forms of debt. This is typically the earliest point at which credit reporting may eventually occur, though it is not immediate. After 180 days, longer-term consequences. If a medical bill remains unpaid for an extended period, it may appear on a credit report as a medical collection. Additional consequences, such as restricted access to certain providers or rare legal action, may occur depending on the situation. Importantly, this entire process usually unfolds over many months, not days or weeks. How medical debt differs from other types of debt. One of the most important things to understand is that medical debt is not treated the same way as credit card debt, personal loans, or other consumer debt. Medical debt typically arises from necessary or unexpected care, rather than voluntary borrowing. Because of this, both regulators and credit scoring systems often treat it differently. For example, medical collections generally take longer to appear on credit reports. In addition, paid medical collections are often removed from credit reports entirely, which is not always the case with other debts. This difference is a key reason why ignoring a medical bill does not have immediate consequences, but it does not mean there are no consequences at all. What happens when a medical bill goes to collections? When a medical bill is transferred to a collections agency, the agency may begin contacting the patient. These contacts are regulated by federal rules that apply to all debt collectors. Collectors must identify themselves and explain the purpose of the contact. They must provide information about the debt if requested. They are allowed to request payment, but they are not allowed to harass, threaten, or mislead. Importantly, a collections agency contacting you does not mean you are being sued. It also does not mean your credit has already been damaged. It simply means the account has moved to a new stage. What debt collectors cannot legally do? There are many misconceptions about the power of debt collectors. In reality, their authority is limited. Collectors cannot threaten arrest or criminal charges. Medical debt is a civil matter, not a criminal one. They cannot falsely claim that legal action is imminent if it is not. They also cannot contact you at unreasonable hours or continue contacting you after certain requests are made. Understanding these limits is important because fear often causes people to avoid communication entirely, which can make situations worse rather than better. Credit reporting and medical debt, what really happens? One of the most common concerns people have is how ignoring a medical bill affects their credit. Medical debt does not appear on credit reports immediately. There is typically a waiting period before unpaid medical collections are reported. This delay is designed to allow time for insurance adjustments and billing corrections. When medical debt does appear on a credit report, its impact on credit scores is often less severe than other types of collections. In addition, if the medical debt is later paid, it is often removed from the report. This does not mean medical debt has no impact. It simply means the system treats it differently and often more leniently than other forms of debt. Insured versus uninsured, two different paths. The experience of ignoring a medical bill can differ depending on whether someone has insurance. For insured patients, unpaid balances often result from deductibles, coinsurance, or services not covered by the plan. These balances are often smaller and may be subject to ongoing insurance review. For uninsured patients, bills may be larger and issued more directly. However, uninsured patients are often eligible for financial assistance programs or negotiated rates that insured patients may not access automatically. In both cases, ignoring the bill does not stop the process, but the available options and timelines may differ. Common real-life scenarios. To better understand how this plays out, consider a few common situations. A patient visits the emergency room and receives multiple bills weeks later from different providers. Confused, the patient ignores them, assuming they are duplicates. In reality, each bill represents a separate service, and each follows its own timeline. Another patient receives a bill for an out-of-network service they did not realize was out-of-network. Believing the charge is unfair, they ignore it. Meanwhile, the bill moves forward through the system unchanged. These scenarios are common and show why ignoring medical bills often creates confusion rather than resolution. Disputes and errors. Why ignoring does not fix them. Medical billing errors are common. Duplicate charges, incorrect coding, and insurance mistakes happen frequently. However, errors are not automatically corrected. Ignoring a bill does not trigger a review. Instead, the bill continues along the standard process. By the time the issue is addressed, the account may already be in collections, making correction more complicated. This is one reason why understanding the system matters, even if no immediate action is taken. Financial assistance and payment plans. Many healthcare providers offer payment plans or financial assistance programs, sometimes even after a bill is overdue. These programs may reduce balances, spread payments over time, or eliminate charges based on income. However, these options are often time-sensitive. Ignoring a bill entirely can mean missing opportunities that were available earlier in the process. This does not mean assistance disappears immediately, but it often becomes harder to access as time passes. Long-term consequences of doing nothing. Over the long term, unpaid medical bills can result in continued collection activity, credit report entries, or limited access to future services with certain providers. In rare cases, legal action may occur depending on the amount owed and the provider's policies. These outcomes are not automatic, but they are possible. Understanding that consequences are gradual, not immediate, helps reduce fear while still encouraging informed decisions. What this video is not saying: this video does not suggest that medical bills should be ignored. It also does not provide personal advice. Laws, policies, and individual circumstances vary. The purpose of this video is to explain how the system typically works, so people are not relying on assumptions, rumors, or fear. Key takeaways. Medical billing in the United States is slow, complex, and often confusing. Ignoring a medical bill does not lead to immediate or dramatic consequences, but it does not stop the process from continuing. Medical debt is treated differently from other types of debt, especially when it comes to credit reporting. However, long-term non-payment can still have effects. Understanding the system helps people stay calm, informed, and better prepared to navigate what happens next. American Rights Guide exists to explain everyday systems in plain English without fear, politics, or hype. If you found this explanation helpful, consider subscribing for more calm, educational breakdowns of how common systems work in the United States.